Okay, so yesterday we ended with a discussion of the difference between two different opinions, Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon
Mm.
ben Manasseh. That Rabbi Shimon HaTimni said that what mattered is whether or not, in order to determine whether a fine is payable, you had to determine whether or not the marriage could potentially take place between the man and the woman. If it was theoretically possible from a legal perspective that they could get married, well, then there would be a fine. But for example, a brother and sister who are not allowed to get married, so there would not be a fine. And then that was a Shimon and Timni, and Rishon ben Manasseh said, no, you need more than just the theoretical legal possibility. You need to actually be able to stay married, and only if you're able to stay married will there be a fine. And so we went through four potential differences between the two of them. I'm not going to go through all of them again, but we went through four potential differences. And now is going to start with a similarity, with an area in which Rav Chisda and Shimon HaTimni would not only agree to one another, but they would agree even with the author of our Mishnah. So we are at Amar Rav Chisda. It's the last two words on the sixth line of Lamed Amud Aleph. So Amar Rav Chisda, Hakol Modim Biva al Hanida Shemishalim Knas. Everybody agrees, meaning all of Shimon HaTimni, Rabbi Shimon Manasseh, and of course the Tana of our Mishnah, all agree that if one violates a girl while she is menstruating, so during their menstruation period, so then that person will pay a fine. Because Lamanda Amar Yeshba Habaya, because according to Shimon HaTimni, who says that you need to actually be able to have a legally effective marriage, well then, Ha Nami Yeshba Havaya, there can be a marriage. And by the way, this is an important principle that according to the Rambam, you can't actually do nisuin. You can't do a chuppah with a nida, but everybody agrees that at least kedushin could be done with a nida. So, although we thankfully paskin that you were all able to do even nisuin with the nida, and so on the occasions where the wife, the bride is a nida, they are still able to get married. They don't have to postpone the wedding. So the manda amar ru'uya l'kaima, and according to the one that says that you need to be able to stay married, that was Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh. Well, then hanami ru'uya l'kaima. So then this person also could stay married. So that's the conclusion. That's the story with Shimon ben Manasseh. Yes.
You mean there's an opinion that if you sleep with your wife while she's a nida, you have to get divorced? That's what we're talking about?
No, we're talking about, remember that we're dealing with a question of whether or not the fine is required when a man violates a nara. And so the question is in order to determine that, Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh said that you need to be able to stay married to the woman, meaning that there has to be able to be marriage, and that there's no legal prohibition to stay married. And Shimon HaTimni says, well, you don't need to be able to stay married, but you do absolutely have to have a legally binding marriage. And whereas in the Mishnah, our Mishnah, you don't need any of that. You don't need a legally binding marriage. We said we even had a whole concept that we had the extra words that taught us.
Still have to pay a kanas, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. This is all in order to pay the kanas to the father. Exactly.
Okay. They want to restrict the conditions, circumstances.
Exactly, because the psukim that talk about the kanas mention marriage. So as a result, the question, it's quite logical. In fact, without the additions that we went through, and how there were six extra words, or six words, two to teach us the main principles, two to teach us additional things, and then two to teach us one the lav and one the kares. That's how we ended up being able to say that you don't have to be able to stay married, because otherwise just the literal wording of the words says that requires the person to stay married forever to the person. So there must be some sense of marriage according to both Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh. So now we're going to
Why isn't it even a question then? Why was
Say
the
more.
case even brought up if everyone agrees that Anita can stay married to her husband? So why
Why
did
did
we
the
bring that
Gemara need to
example?
bring this? Because I think the point is that this is an exception to the rule that in general, because relations with a nida is subject to a kares penalty, and one might have thought that even though Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh have detailed their positions based on marriage rules, those marriage rules go along with kares rules. So in general, again, except for Rabbi Akiva, in general, the difference between when you can marry and when you can't is based on whether or not it's subject to kares. If it's subject to kares, then marriage is not legally possible. But if it's not subject to kares, then it is legally possible. But this is an exception to that rule, and so we want to just clarify that this particular exception. That's how I'm understanding it. Okay, so now that we've dealt with this, one of the things that has been implicit in everything that we've dealt with is this concept of kumle b'derabamine, that when you are subject to multiple penalties, you are only going to get the most severe of those penalties. And we're now going to dive into the topic, because so the Gemara says, Ula Apuke mid Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, that all of this, the Mishnah, Shimon HaTimni, Shimon ben Manasseh, all of that is different from Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, because the Tanya, Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, Haya Osa es Yom HaKippurim b'Shabbos l'Tashlumin, he would make the rules with respect to monetary payments for Shabbos apply also to Yom Kippur. Now, why is that important? Because on Yom Kippur, the penalty of doing malacha is only kares. All right. So Ma Shabbos mischayev benafsho upater min hatishlumin, and so whereas Shabbos you are actually killed by the court of law, and so when it comes to Shabbos we say that if you're chayev with your life, so then you're exempt for penalty payment. So exactly as we said yesterday, if you burn somebody's field down on Shabbos, you are only subject to and again only in air quotes, subject to the death penalty. You are not also liable for a monetary payment. So af Yom HaKippurim nischayev b'nafsho ufater min hatashlumin. So too on Yom Kippur. Now again on Yom Kippur, you're not obligated to the death penalty from court. You are only subject to the penalty of kares. And so as a result, you are, but according to Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, so that is sufficient to allow you to be exempt from payment. So, and obviously that's very relevant. This also would provide a reason why we need to teach the law about nida, because nida is the one case for Rabbi Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh where it's subject to kares, and so it's important to clarify that they also will disagree with Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, because every other case you can't really tell the difference between Shimon HaTimni and Shimon ben Manasseh on the one hand, and Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana on the other hand, because for Shimon HaTimni and Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh, you don't pay a fine when you sleep with your sister because the penalty is because there's no marriage that applies. But for Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, the reason is because it's subject to kares. So the end result is the same. Both of them agree that you're not subject to the penalty, but there are different reasons as to why that's the case. So for Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, it's not because marriage might not apply, it's because we don't apply two penalties to the same case. So my time with the Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, what's the reasoning of Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana? So the Gemara is going to offer two explanations. So we're going to offer explanation number one from Abaye, and then we'll offer a second explanation from Rava, and but we will not get to the Rava explanation until the second half of today. So Amar Abaye Nemar Ason Bidei Adam. So effort number one of Abaye is to point to the pasuk that says Ason. It says in connection with in Shmot Parakuf Aleph Parak Pasuk Kaf Beis, Lo Yason Anoshi Anish, that if in fact when a man and woman are fighting and they and the only fatality is the fetus, and the woman doesn't actually die as a result of the fighting between the men, so then the man who does the damage to the woman and causes her to miscarry is going to have to pay compensation for the fetus. But the key element of this pasuk is that the only time that they're subject to that penalty is if she doesn't die, meaning if she does die, then she will be subject to then the man would be subject to the capital penalty and subject to the death penalty, and so as a result, he would not have to pay the fee, the monetary damages for having killed the fetus.
There's no concept that would be murder in and of itself, though. Killing.
No concept. For a Jew, it's clear that it's not the level of murder that would require the death penalty. That's for sure. But it also says v'ne'amar ason b'dei shamayim, when Yaakov expresses concern about Yosef going. About Binyamin going down to Egypt. It says that he's worried. Shema, pen yikru ason, that maybe he will actually be something bad will happen. Ukrauhu ason, that maybe something bad will happen along the way, and we don't want that to happen. So but there. So that ma'ason ha'amor bidei adam pater min tashlumin af ason ha'amor bidei shamayim pater min tashlumin. So there, in the case of Yaakov, it's referring. It's not talking about somebody murdering, but it's talking about something bad happening along the road. And so that, at least at the moment, the Gemara is understanding that to be a reference to some heavenly sent punishment of death. So Maskifla Rav Ada Barahava. So Rav Ada Barahava asks the question: Mimaydakika Mazhar Luhu Yaakov Levaneha Al Tzini Mufachim Davide Shamayim Ninhu Dilma Al Arya Viganve Davide Adam Ninhu. Why are you saying, Abaye? How do you know that when Yaakov was expressing this concern, he was referring to something like heat and cold, which are in the hands of heaven? Maybe he was referring to lion and thieves, which are at the hands of man. So to Yaakov aha. So the Gemara answers, to Yaakov aha azahar aha azahar aha lo azahar. So in second, is Yaakov only concerned about one of them? He's Yaakov al kol milei azahar. He's worried about all of them. He's warning about all of them. So the point is that yes, you could say that it's also covering human, but it's clear that he's also intending for heavenly brought death. And so now we're going to challenge the concept that what we just called heavenly brought death and humanly brought death. So we referred to humanly brought death was a lion and thieves, and heavenly brought death is cold and heat. So now we're going to
maybe a better word to use is caused or something.
Caused, yes, caused death. Yes, thank you. So that so v'tzinim upachim b'dei shamayim hinu. Is it really true that a cold and heat are from Hashem? V'atanya hakol b'dei shamayim chutz mitzinim upachim. That every kind of sickness and illness. Where did we see this? We saw this, I think, recently. That goes to Okay, I thought we saw this. I thought we saw this concept recently, but in any event, so every kind of death is due to sort of Hashem's role in the world, except for cold and heat. Shene'emar sinim pachim b'derech ikesh shomer nafsho yirchak mehem. Right. So because it says in Mishlei that if cold and heat are in the path of those who are perverse, of those who do the wrong thing, one who guards his soul will distance himself from them. So that suggests that that one has the ability to protect oneself.
Like heat prostration or something, or talking about like freezing to death, or
yeah,
what?
freezing to death or burning up to death in very high heat. So Besu Arye Beganve Bide Adam Ninu. And really, is it true that lions and thieves are considered at the hands of man? V'hamar of Yosef, V'chein Tane Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chia have taught the following brisa: Miyom Shechara Beis Hamikdash, Av Al Pisha Batlu Sanhedrin, Arba Misus Lo Batlu. That when it even though the temple was destroyed, and now we no longer have a Sanhedrin to impose a death penalty, there are effectively 4 types of executions that have not ceased. Lo batlu, habadlu. Of course they ceased because the Sanhedrin isn't meeting. How could these be imposed? Ella, as we turn to Lamed Amabet, din arba misus lo batlu. No, the point is that the 4 types of death have not ceased, and we're going to see exactly what it means. So Mishin is chayav skila, because somebody who's chayav skila, what's going to happen to that person? O nofel minagag, o chaya dorasto. Either he'll fall from the roof, and so that's that. There are 2 aspects of stoning. The first was he's thrown off a cliff, and the second is that stones are thrown on the person. So either he'll fall from the roof, and so thereby have that aspect of the stoning process happen to him. Chaya dorasto, or he'll be trampled by beasts, so wild animals, and so as a result, the effect of the stoning would also happen to him. But we see here's an example of wild animals attacking somebody, and it's basically considered like it's from heaven. Umishin is chayav sreifa, and one who's chayav sreifa, who's burning. O nofel b'deleka, o nachash makisho. Either a fire will burn the person will fall into a fire, or a snake will bite him, because a snake bite has venom that is effectively I don't know this from personal experience, but my understanding is that it just feels like your whole body's on fire. Umishin is chayev hariga, and somebody who's subject to the death penalty through beheading. O nimser lamalchus, either they'll get given over to the kingship in order to the authorities, to the non-Jewish authorities. O lisdim banalav, or he'll be attacked by bandits. So uminishishin is chayav chenek, and somebody who's chayav strangulation. O toveya benahar, they'll drown. O mace b'strunki, or they're going to die of some kind of disease that is a disease that effectively prevents your breathing. So the bottom line is that doesn't mean, note that it doesn't mean in the other direction. Just because somebody dies from any of these things doesn't mean that they were chayav misa. But the point is in the other direction, if you're chayav misa, so then that's the case. Now, of course, it's not really, on some level, Tosos asks the question, well, one second, it's not every situation that we see this, and answers that effectively, that we can, maybe the person did tshuva, or they're getting their reward in this world. So it's not a perfect rule, but in any event, the point is that what we've seen is both a lion and although lion was not specifically mentioned, but we've seen that basically animal killing, being killed by an animal, and having robbers kill you, those are both things that are considered at the hands of Hashem. So Ella Epoch. So let's reverse it. So Aryeh Beganvi Bidei Shemayim Sinu Pachim Bidei Adam. So when we had that question, right, then Ada Barahaba asked the question. So reverse it, meaning that we should understand that cold and heat are the things that are considered at the hand of man, meaning that we all have the ability on some level to protect from them. Either we stay inside when it's hot or cold outside, or we wear extra layers, or we take off layers, etc. Bottom line is that there's still things that we can do as humans to protect ourselves from it. But on some level, when it comes to lions and bandits, we're less able to protect ourselves, and we just have to recognize that those are things that are effectively at the hands of heaven.
This
So,
is,
okay,
this is a very powerful teaching.
yes, this is a very and important for things like COVID and the like.
Right. When you look at like people who die from heat waves, it's both. That's what the Gemara is saying. It's one climate change, which is partly humanly caused, but it's, and societal factors like lack of air conditioning and stuff like that. But it's also like the weather, which is out of our control in some sense,
Correct. Well,
that is the same thing, it's like distribution of food throughout the world, and but it's also lack of rain, so it's really hard to distinguish, so they're really bound together.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, that's what the whole back and forth that exists here is about, is the fact that it's hard to distinguish. But one of the important lessons, the Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim points to this, and maybe this is where I'm remembering it from. It points to this concept of the cold and heat being things that are Yedei Adam, as saying that if you go through life ignoring, so you go outside and you ignore the weather and you don't pay attention, and and you don't look at what the weather's supposed to be, then you're not doing the right thing. You're not being responsible for yourself. And so similarly, you can't walk around outside, with your head in your phone, even though I know that I'm one who sometimes does that, and ignore, stoplights and walk into the street. Those are things that, Hashem is not going to necessarily protect you from that.
Some people don't have heat in their apartments, and or don't have air conditioning, so it's not just completely in your power.
That is certainly true, But the point is that the idea is that we shouldn't ignore the power that we do have. That's what the Ruchan Musatu is saying. Okay. In any event, so that was answer number one for the source for where Reb Nechunya ben Hakana learned this concept, namely the fact that the references to Ason indicating that both, whether it's from heaven or from humanity, we're going to be concerned, we're going to apply the same rule, so that just as by a death penalty that humans impose, you only get the death penalty and you don't get the monetary penalty. So similarly, even if it's a death penalty from the hands of heaven, so then it would also get only the death penalty and not the monetary penalty. So Rava Amar, time of the Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana Mehachat, he offers an alternative explanation. V'im halem yalimu im am haaretz es einehem min ha'ish hahu b'tzito mizaro lamolach. That the v'samti ani es panai be'ish hahu u'mishpachto b'hichrati. So the Torah says, in connection with somebody who's doing a molach, that and this is in Vayikra, that Hashem will will cut off that person and impose the punishment of kares. So, but the point is that it's connecting humanity, or the Jewish people, failure to punish the person who is chayav misa, and Hashem imposing the penalty of kares. So Amra Torah, kares shali kamisa shalchem, right? That this is teaching us that God's punishment of kares is similar to humanity's punishment of misa. Ma misa shalchem pater min tashlumin, af kares shali pater min tashlumin. So we see that just as if somebody is subject to the death penalty from court, they will be exempt from payment. So too, if they're subject to kares, they'll also be exempt from payment. So
compare it to mita b'yadei shamayim rather than karet.
Sorry, say that again.
They don't compare it to mita b'yadei shamayim.
You're answering the difference between Abaye and Rava. You've just highlighted the difference between Abaye and Rava. So we're going to get to that in literally 2 seconds. That you're exactly right. In this pasuk, though, the key is that v'hichratioso, right? So therefore, it's only kares, whereas the previous one was ason, and it didn't make a difference. It was just from heaven. So so exactly. So my iku ben Rava Abaye. What's the difference between Rava and Abaye? Iku ben Ayu zar sha'achal truma. If you have a non-Kohen who eats truma, because the penalty is not kares, but rather death min hashamayim. So as a result, Abaye is pater, right? For Abaye it's pater because that's part of ason. V'la Rava chayiv, but for Rava it's chayiv because Rava only limits it for kares and doesn't limit it to doesn't apply his principle to all death penalties. So exactly right. Ulu Abaye pater. So 1 second. So now the Gemara wonders: is it really true that Abaye would say that somebody who eats truma would be exempt from paying a monetary penalty? V'ha'amar Rav Chisda, we have a statement of Rav Chisda, Moda Rabbi Nechunya ben Nakana, the gonev chelbo shel chaveru v'achalo, that if somebody steals the chelev that belongs to somebody else and eats it, shehu chayiv, that the person is chayiv. But now, why are they chayiv? So again, based on the principle of, it seems like that the issue is that he's chayiv kares and he's getting chelev. So why is it? And the reason is shekvar nischayev b'geneva, because he had already stolen the chelev, the kodem shabali day iser chelev, before he actually ate it. So alma de meidna de agbe kanya. So we see that the moment he lifted it up, the chelev becomes his. Well, mischayev benafsho lo hava ad achel, but he doesn't become chayev kares until he actually eats it. Well, hachanami, when it comes to the Kohen eating truma, how would there ever be a case where the non-Kohen ate truma and didn't already steal it? So be'inu de agve kanye, as soon as he picks it up, he's stolen it and he'll be liable. So mischayev benafsho lo havi ad achavlei, but he won't actually be chayev for the death penalty until he eats it. So how is that going to be, in fact, a distinction between Rava and Abaye? What kind of case are we talking about? So Hakabamayaskin, and this is how we could be understanding it. Kigon shetachav lo chaveiro l'toch piv. We're talking about a case where a person put it directly into the guy's mouth. Well, kaven de la asye kanye. Well, once he's chewing it, before he necessarily ate it and is chayev kares for that, so he'll or chayev misa b'dei shamayim for it. He will have acquired it and stolen it. So mischayev benasho lo habi adavala, but he's not going to be subject to the penalty of misa b'dei shamayim until he actually swallows it. So that doesn't work. So just putting it in his mouth doesn't work. So we'll say they shoved it directly into his throat, and so as a result, it happens at the same time. Well, hechidami, if he has the ability to bring it back up and spit it out, so nihadar, he needs to bring it back out and spit it out. And so if he doesn't do so, well, then that's when he's chayav the money, whereas he's only chayav the penalty of misa b'dei shamayim when he actually swallows it and it can't come back out. So ilo matzila adura, and if he can't, he's not able to have it come back out, amai chayiv, why is he liable in the first place? He didn't do anything voluntarily. So lo tzricha de matzila adura al yedei hadchak. So it's a place where they brought it back, where he can get it back out with difficulty, but and as a result, it's theoretically possible, but at the same time, it's very difficult. And so we're going to say that it's as if he's already swallowed it.
Why are
Alternative.
they bringing this one case that is like so far-fetched?
Well, the goal is to try and highlight the difference between, meaning why there've got to be other cases of Misa B'dei Shamayim that we could somehow create. I'm not so up to all the possibilities of Misa B'dei Shamayim to be able to answer that one. But they're trying to, they've raised this, and so now that they raised this as a possibility because it is a Misa B'dei Shamayim, they're trying to figure out how whether there's a way to situate it so that it's a Misa B'dei Shamayim, so that because remember, you have to be obligated for two things at the same time. You have to be obligated for a monetary thing, and you have to be obligated to the death penalty Misa B'dei Shamayim at the same exact moment. So
You ate Caleb, you stole it and you ate it. So that's the two things, right?
yes, but the problem is we saw that with respect to Caleb that you're actually obligated to pay. Even Nechunya would agree that you're obligated to pay. So now again, and we're back to the case of Truma, because Caleb is actually Chayav Kares. Truma is Chayav Misa B'dei Shamayim. Right. So we're talking about it's got to be something that's Truma. So now Rav Papa is going to give a much easier case, and it makes a lot more sense to say this. So Rav Papa Amar Kagon Shetachav Lo Chaveru Mashkin Shel Truma L'Tok Piv. A person just poured the liquid into your mouth. Well, now if you're swallowing it as you're receiving it, so then effectively there is no difference in the time between when it went into your mouth and when you took ownership of it and when you swallowed it. Rav Ashi says, Bizarre she'achal truma mishalo. Actually, you could say that we're talking about a non-Kohen who was eating truma that he somehow inherited. So for example, he could inherit truma because his mother was a Bas Kohen. And maybe she was the only daughter of a Kohen, and so she inherits him, and then he inherits the truma that belonged one time to his grandfather, his maternal grandfather, the Kohen. And so as a result, he now owns truma. And what happens? Well, then where's the monetary damage? So the monetary damage is v'kara shiroyan eshel chavero, and at the same time that he is swallowing eating that truma, he is also tearing pieces of cloth that belong to his friend. And so as a result, so Rashi, take a look at Rashi, top Rashi on Lamed Aleph, Aleph, Bisha Shebola, at the moment that he is swallowing. And even though there is no the death penalty is not a result of any monetary issue, the nizak asya le miftar. Nonetheless, he will be pater. The svira leila Rav Ashi misa lezeh v'teshlumin lezeh pater. That even if you have two different mitzvos, that one is for misa and one is for teshlumin, and there's sort of two separate things, it can still be put together. So that's why, of course, it makes sense that Rav Papa might not like Rav Ashi's answer, but in any event, those are the three different answers that we offer as to what we can have as a difference between Rava and Abaye. And so we'll stop.
You think pater mina tashlumim?
Yes, pater mina tashlumim. That's exactly right. So the idea is that that even though he's torn this garment at the same time that he swallowed something, because the swallowing will subject him to a death from heaven, Misa B'dei Shamayim. So as a result, he will not be obligated for the monetary damages. So tomorrow we'll pick up here, and we'll take an additional look at the details of Rav Nechunya ben Akana. And I will note that God willing, maybe I should get a little bit more done. Let's see if there's another good spot to end. This is where I had planned to stop, but I'm wondering whether we should do a little bit more, because tomorrow what we're going to do is tomorrow.
What time are we meeting tomorrow?
An hour and a half before Mincha, but tomorrow Ellie's back, so Ellie will be teaching an hour and a half before. And remember, it's an early Mincha, so it'll be an hour and a half early, and he's going to try and get through not only tomorrow's daf but Sunday's daf, because we don't learn Torah on Tisha B'Av. So let me.
That's good. That's fine.
Yeah. All right. So we'll stop here, and he should be able to get it. It's not. This is as we see from today. These dapim are a little bit shorter, although of course there's lots and lots of stuff to talk about.
Like at 5:30 tomorrow or something, or 5?
I think Mincha is at 5:30, so it would be something like 4 would be. But keep an eye on your WhatsApp, and we will certainly be circulating it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Have a
Have a
great
good
day.
Shabbos. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye, David.
Going 7:25.
Bye.